All right. Abby, thanks for being here with us today. And hopefully Emily will enjoy watching this when she can. And so this class is all about how to develop and facilitate workshops. And so we've asked different practitioners to come in and talk with the group. And obviously you've been doing this for a while and you are a student in AL. So how awesome is that, that you're just right here in our backyard virtually. So can you tell us about Inkwell, how did it get started? How long you've been doing this? What are you doing? Just kind of give us your bird's eye view of your company.
Sure. So where I am now is not where I started. I started actually a consulting. I was just an individual consultant, and I was targeting moms who were entering back into the workforce to do some like personal development. And I got no moms. So I was like, okay, so clearly my messaging is off and how I'm, putting this, how I'm marketing this. I ended up getting a lot of like 20 something, 30 something sales, executives. I'm going to actually switch my internet.
Kind of an epic freeze frame.
You're muted.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, I realized I didn't switch my my little port, and I freeze up a lot on the other one. So, what's the last thing you heard?
You got
20s and 30s.
What'd you say?
Like you targeted moms.
Oh, 20 somethings. Yeah. 20 and 30s, sales executive type folks. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll pivot into this space since this is what is happening. When I initially started doing consulting, I don't know why, but I really ignored all of my past. So I coached for 15 years, played professionally, and I don't know why, I just thought launching in the sports space was too easy or something. I really don't. I really kind of went away from that. But the more that I was doing kind of individual consulting, the more I was like, what am I, what am I doing? I just had like kind of a come to Jesus of like, I should be in, like, this is my background. My background is sports. My background is coaching, being an athlete, being a student athlete. So I just decided to go all in, because I wasn't really sold on the niche of 20 something, 30 something salespeople. I was never in sales. I mean, maybe you could count recruiting. So I just felt so much more comfortable being in that niche of, sport, athletics, sport organizations. So that kind of launched in 2021, August of 2021. So not that long ago. When I initially launched to moms, it was during the pandemic. It was July of 2020. So really went all in that space. I am certified in a tool called Core Clarity, and we use that heavily. So it's essentially Clifton's. Call it Clifton Strengths on steroids. If you have any assessment background, which I had some of, this to me has been by far the best that I've seen. That's applicable, memorable. So I ended up getting certified in it because I thought it was the most relevant for sports. Like, actually, how do I use this in this space as a coach with my athletes, or as an athlete? How do I use this on the field when I'm communicating with teammates? So that is kind of like a foundation of our business. So what we do is we go into sport organizations. That's our focus. It could be the athletes, it could be a team, it could be coaches, or it could be kind of senior staff members. And it's not just collegiate, it can be youth sport organizations. And we use Core Clarity as kind of our our foundational tool, but then we kind of launch out from there regarding, hey, what are, what's actually happening within this organization? So we really provide sport organizations with kind of knowledge and skills to gain those powerful results. And obviously those results are like a moving target, like, for everybody, what is the end result? It was just me in the beginning, and then it ended up kind of, I think anybody, when you've been in kind of an athletic environment and you're a coach or you're a player, and anybody that was kind of sharing this with regarding that, it was like a no-brainer, like, hey, how do I better communication and increase trust and engagement with teams? Like, and there's something that can help me do that, like, bring it on. Like, of course, let's go. So we've grown to about 7, and they're just people are just subcontractors. They're not actually my employees, but yeah, so that's, we do highly curated. So we don't have necessarily templates that we use. Obviously, when you kind of get into enough organizations or work with enough people, you see the same pain points. So you can kind of predict what's happening within an environment. But I use like Clifton Strengths Assessment and Core Clarity to help create those highly curated instructional designs for workshops, because I find that those seem for me are most relevant, and I'm really targeting the person that I'm working with something that they're going to pick up easier if I put it in their language, so to speak. Yeah, that's really long-winded.
Quick contextual question here.
Sure.
Do you work one-on-one or one-on-team?
Yes, so both. So really our target market is parents, because we do work with athletes, but obviously parents are usually the buyer. Parents, coaches, and administrators, kind of 38 to 60 and men and women is really kind of who we target towards. But we work with individual athletes. I have a athlete program. I prefer doing kind of small group, just because I think when you're working with athletes, everybody kind of learns from each other. And then we work with coaches, but usually that's in conjunction with working with their team. I like to connect the two, because I think, hey, then a coach has a petri dish they can try things in. But I find the two are very synonymous. I think it's difficult to just try to affect the coach without potentially the coach having those tools really intact to affect the team. And then kind of senior staff usually is, we consider that a team, a group. So great questions.
Now, I will say this for Jana and Hannah, I've got many questions, but
Hannah, that's my language.
You got to jump in here, Hannah, because I'm just going to ask the questions that I care about. But like, if you have things that you want to ask, go for
I'm
it.
going to stay on mute till Chet's done.
I will jump in, Chet. Don't worry, but you can start it.
We'll go opposite. I'll just popcorn to you, and you popcorn to me.
Okay. You want to start? You can start.
That's my love language. I love questions.
What?
I just asked my first question.
Well, Chet. We'll ask your second, and then we'll go.
All right, fine. Abby, you mentioned that you have a team of seven contractors, and I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about that transition that you faced when you first went from being a one-man show to building a team around you. Like, how did you know the time was right for that? And, well, frankly, how did you know who to hire?
I think the timing was, I just realized I couldn't do it all alone. Like, trying to run a back end of a business, I think is challenging enough in itself. But then I also knew, like, I like working with others. Like, I like having a small team, like that is energizing to me. So for me, it was more of, I'm not a solo, like, let's just, hey, go fast and I'll go alone. I wanted to have people around me that shared the same passion. I understand that this is my business, so the sharing of that passion is not going to be quite the same. But just knew that I wanted to be doing this with other people who I knew were passionate about this, development, getting tools in the hands of coaches, and teams and athletes, and then seeing, I had already seen someone doing this and the effect that it was having. So I knew on some level it wasn't a question of, does this work or is this going to be effective? I already could see that and knew that it was. For me, adding the contractors felt right. And so it wasn't necessarily difficult. Like, it wasn't a hard choice for me or a hard decision. Obviously there is some management that has to happen that doesn't happen when you're alone. But I enjoy that. I really do enjoy working with people. In terms of the right people, one of my highest values is curiosity. And so, and this wasn't intentional, but it ended up happening this way. And after I saw this, I realized, okay, this is why these people are here. Everyone on our team has the talent of learner, in their top 5 talents. So naturally we're on the same page in terms of being really curious, asking questions, trying to get to the heart of issues, wanting to expand our knowledge base and awareness of tools and research. So it was, the people who are on our team, was just a really easy fit, easy transition.
Did you know them beforehand?
I had worked with some of, I had worked with some of them beforehand. So everybody that's on the team, with the exception, there's a couple that are not on the website just because they're in current jobs. But I had either known them or they were introduced to me through the people that are currently on our team. So, there was kind of a connection point, like, hey, I think this person would be a really good fit, for what we're doing.
I have a question.
Sure.
How did you decide you wanted to leave coaching and go into this?
Yeah, so that was not just a switch. It was, I left coaching because I had my second daughter and my husband's also a coach, and it was just like 2 ships passing in the night. Like, we just were not in the same schedule. And I also knew that there was something about just the timing of where I was at in my coaching career that if I had like died tomorrow, I was going to regret a lot of things of how I was spending my time. And so I left coaching in 2016 and didn't, start my initial business until 2020. So in that period of 4 years, there was a lot of, I wrestled a lot because I had played or coached for over half my life. So, there was a lot of identity stuff, that I had to really pull apart. But within that, I realized what I loved about coaching was really developing athletes and that relationship, and seeing someone, come in as one way and then leave another way, or gain some, not even physical skills, but just, confidence, or, things that they could carry with them into their life so they could really be successful in what they were doing, not just successful, in soccer. And I was like, man, that's what I miss. I don't miss the X's and O's. I don't miss, teaching tactics or technique, or I miss the development of people and those relationships. So I ended up sitting through a workshop actually that my friend was doing for a bunch of coaches. And this was when I wasn't coaching. This was 2017. And it was a core clarity workshop. And I had already done DISC and Myers-Briggs and another assessment. And I remember thinking, this is the best that I have seen. Like, this by far is the most relevant to sport and application. And it took me a while, but I ended up getting certified in 2019. But that workshop was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. Not necessarily just, hey, the material in this workshop, or hey, the tool of core clarity, but being able to have people come in or deliver something to somebody that I know will make an impact in how they lead and how they communicate and how they relate to their athletes. Like, it was a no-brainer. So that's how I ended up kind of getting into that lane of doing workshops and facilitation. And then obviously just the business kind of found its way over time.
So you're seeing a whole bunch of clients now, and it's one-on-one, like you were describing, or one-on parent, or one-on coaches, or small groups with teams and things like that. My question specifically is, how do you receive feedback at the end of a client session? Do you receive feedback? And if you do, how do you do it? And what have you found to be really effective in receiving good feedback?
So I try to have check-in points. I think it's a little bit harder with athletes because I think they're just they're more concerned with themselves and they're not as aware of like what you're doing, but I still always ask for feedback. But I'll do kind of verbal check-ins if I'm working with coaches, just, hey, how did that go? What did you think about that? What was positive? What could be different? But I always do just an anonymous evaluation at the end. So usually I'll give it to everyone. I'll give it to the whole team. And if a coach is okay with us having like an actual meeting, because really I need transparency. I don't need anybody to blow smoke or think that they're going to make me feel bad if they give me feedback that might feel a little more negative. But I try to really preface that feedback, whether it's the evaluation, or hey, if we're doing kind of a verbal evaluation, just of this is what I'm looking for in terms of feedback. I'm looking for this to really help this become better for the next coach, so don't hold back. Like, if this can become better, if this can get sharper, if we can eliminate some of the time it takes to understand concepts, that's stuff that I really want to know. Like, so, there's no, you don't need to sugarcoat it. You don't need to try to make it sound nice. And I have found that seems to be okay. I think with the feedback with teams, I try to keep it to like a Likert scale and try not to make it very long. I do give opportunities for them to write things in if they'd like to. Like, if I'm asking a question on, hey, how did this affect your confidence? I'll Likert scale it, but then leave an option for them to, hey, would you like to share how underneath? So there is space for them to write, but I usually just keep it with teams. I keep it pretty simple. I would like to kind of gauge before and after, but really it's mainly after. And then if I'm working with a coach and I can get kind of that verbal feedback during, and I will say, Chet, that we try to stay away from like one and done workshops. It's just not my style. I don't like it. I think sustainability and just being relational and connecting is more of my speed, so that there is opportunity. Like, there's a lot of connection points.
Right. Especially with what you're coaching them on, is relationships. And,
yes.
That
totally. Yep.
Development work doesn't happen in 160-minute session.
No. And I think for us, part of the result is dependent on the coach understanding and implementing, or the athlete understanding and implementing. And that doesn't happen in one session.
For sure. So surveys is what I'm hearing you say.
Surveys
at the end of
interview.
each session but also verbal connections
Yeah.
throughout the session.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I have probably like a 20 for the coach. I've got like 25 questions that I ask for the coach, but then there's their observations of their team also. So there's both of those.
Kind of going off of that, you said that you target towards like parents as well. So like what does that look like? Does like your sessions with parents, does it go hand in hand obviously with the athlete, and like is the session with parent like how do you support your athlete? And then like
so I don't really do a lot of coaching with parents. If we're talking like lead generation, like I'll do something for parents for free, like some type of learning session or but it's really for their athletes because the parent is the buyer. So I target parents, but it's really more so like, hey, is your athlete, struggling with this, or, trying to pull out some of those kind of common pain points. So really I don't have like a specific course or class that I just do for parents. I've thought about that though. But usually I do something free and then I'm able to like, hey, this is what we do. I give them some good things some nuggets that they can take with them, but then be able to have an audience to present like what we do, what we can do for athletes.
Is it okay if I ask a question, guys?
Yep. Yeah.
So out of curiosity, I 100% agree with you about trying to steer clear of the one-offs, right? I call it like the aunt comes to visit, much rather be the grandmother. How do you, I want to be knitting a sweater. I want to be wearing your shirt on your face.
Thanksgiving season is, I can totally tell.
Yeah. How do you present that when you are like approaching a new client, right? If that's all they're interested in, are you like, that's not what we do? Or are you like, well, let us show you what we can do with the budget that you have? Like, how do you present your work in a non one-off way, I guess?
So usually what I normally do is I'll take a potential client. I try to screen. So I will say that, like, I really do try to, like, our messaging and who we are reaching out to, like, we're still kind of working in our network and borrowed networks. So like, it's, hey, we know this person loves learning and development. I've already decided, and I know that it cuts business out. I don't want to work with people who just want one off or who just want us to come in and, I don't even know what that is. You want us to come in and transform your team in 3 hours? Like, it's never going to happen. So those are not my people. So I genuinely try to avoid that because I know at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to deliver for those people because our expectations are already different. So I don't work with them. I will say I do try to take people through like a coaching session, just to give them like a little taste of what it looks like and where we start from. And that usually, I think, kind of casts a vision of like, oh, like this isn't just you come in and you say some cool concepts and you walk away. Like, I think they kind of can see that. And then it does give me space to say like, here's how this looks when you're trying to implement this in your environment. And it doesn't happen in one session. Like, it takes repetition and sustainability over time, but we try to equip you with that. And I think for coaches, at least, and maybe we've just got better at selecting the right ones, they're cool with that. Like, oh, you're going to help me like over time. Like, great. And I think that's actually appreciated because it's like you become another staff member sort of, but legally, because you're contracted to do this work. But yeah, I really try to those are just not my people.
I do feel like since COVID, coaches are wanting more of that work with you through thick and thin rather than the drop in the bucket. So
I would say that there's definitely a need, like, because I think if COVID has done so many things, but I think it's helped coaches see like, oh, I don't have all of these tools that are being asked of me in this moment because I'm a coach. Like, I'm doing X's and O's and I'm worried about the next practice and our next opponent and recruiting. And like, I think we can't ask coaches to be, sports psychologists and counselors and, you know, facilitating this type of information. I think it's too much to ask. I would say the thing that I find most difficult, Jana, is trying to overcome the coach ego of, like, I've got it all. I know it all. And it's like, you don't. Like, I coached for 15 years. I didn't know this stuff because you don't have time to focus on it. You don't have time to be solely dialed in on this type of information. But we do. So let us help you. Let us package it and give it to you in a way that you're going to be able to pick it up really fast and implement it in your team quickly and hopefully see results quick. And not that we're trying to be fast food, but I think, I just think that coaches do want more, but having to overcome the fact that like they don't know this and having to admit that.
Well, and then the other ones who are like, well, I'm doing it. Everybody tells me to do it, so I'm doing it. I'm bringing you in. And then like after 3 hours, they're like, well, tell me what I need to do. It's like, well, I've only been working this your group for 3 hours. It's like the immediacy of answers and the immediacy of like winning and performance, and that's just not real life. But especially if you're the person coming in and we're going to do this half a day or 2 hours, and then they don't do anything with it until you come back again the next time. And then, and it has to become part of the culture. So I was just curious about that. Could you give Hannah and Chet just a little bit of background on, like, I think y'all are pretty familiar with strengths and the Clifton strengths. And I know that Core Clarity uses that, right? But it attaches them more to values, and your report gives you a little bit more, right? With Core Clarity.
So here's what I'll say. And I'll never poo-poo any assessment, because I think anytime anybody's doing some type of personal development, it's always great, like awesome. With a lot of assessments, I call them tools of perception. So you're telling me who you think I am based on this assessment. And what Core Clarity does is they just kind of, you're not getting paragraphs of information. You're going to get some bulleted points, but you're going to tell them, like, you're going to tell me as the facilitator who you are and how these things show up in you based on, and obviously that's what we're facilitating is your personal discovery in these talents, and how they show up in you, because they, if Chet has learner and I have learner, it's going to look different in us. There might be some commonalities between how they show up, but they're going to look different because we're different people. We've got a different talent set surrounding that specific talent. And so Core Clarity is a tool of discovery. And just with adult learning theory, I think anytime people are having to access, okay, how does this show up in certain situations? Okay, when I am stressed, what does this look like? What do I do when people have to kind of pull those things out of themselves more and then reflect more and then remember more? I think they're more likely to grab hold of the information than when someone's giving you, here's 30 paragraphs about yourself. Now, the next time you're in a meeting, see if you can remember any of those. Where I feel like Core Clarity is very memorable with how they color code, and Clifton does that now too. There actually was a lawsuit between the two of them regarding that, but they use anchor graphics. They've got these targeted bullet points that are really short and succinct, and they are more memorable than, hey, I've got to remember these 8 paragraphs about how I react when I'm under pressure. I just think it is, and then just the tool itself, I would say is more representative of humanity, where some of the other assessments, like DISC, like, okay, DI, cool. Like, I think they've tried to expand it more now, but you're telling me that out of all the billions of people in the world, like we can only be one of 16 things, like just feels really boxy, where I feel like anybody's combination of top 5, it's like 1 in 33 million. Like to me, that seems more representative of like humanity and people's uniqueness. And I think it just does a better job of capturing that.
I've never used the tool before. I looked it up just right now. Is there like demos and things that I can check out for free, hopefully?
Yeah, there's if you've got your top 5, you can send them to me. There's a marketing package, so you'll get some of the information, you just don't get all of it, but you can kind of see you can see it a little bit. And I can send you mine. I'll have it right here. I'll put it in the chat.
What do you mean send me?
So what Core Clarity gives you when this is what
when you like go through it.
Yeah, so this is kind of a coaching packet. Let me see. Thought I had it right here. I just have the well, let me put this in here. This is the marketing packet. And I'll throw it in the chat. And everything they do is really intentional, like from the pyramid to the bullet points and how they're organized. And I just found it, as I'm doing like human resource development is what I'm at Clemson for, a lot of like things that I'm learning in terms of instructional design and how people learn, it aligns. And I'm like, oh, we use this, we do that. So I just found it like really confirming and affirming, like just with stuff I'm doing within the major. I'm like, oh, we're doing that. Awesome.
Oh, very cool. I just opened it up. So when you talk about what Inkwell Solutions gets hired to do, it is to come in and facilitate this product and then walk through the discussion of how to unpack it and how to implement changes.
Yeah. So this is our,
am I grasping that?
Yeah. Yes. So this is kind of our launch point. I find it very hard to work with people without knowing kind of their common language. So this is kind of a language tool that I think brings, like, it kind of brings everyone together and brings unity in how we're going to communicate moving forward. But from this launch point, like whatever kind of those pain points that a coach is experiencing, then we launch into those. We may use the tool for some of those, like, hey, like you're experiencing collision with this player because you guys are speaking different languages. Like your talent set is different, and those are natural talents that will collide with each other. Or hey, if it's things within the culture, lack of trust, we'll do, we'll facilitate other learnings based on obviously research and things, but we'll build other learnings that kind of are offshoots of this, where the tool might be involved, but it's not like what we're doing. Hey, we're talking about trust here, but we might reference some of the things that we discussed in an earlier workshop.
I was curious to learn, Abby. We've mentioned a lot. We've talked a lot now about Core Clarity. Are there other digital assets that Inkwell Solutions uses to like scale the scope of what you do? And I'll give a quick example to help clarify what I mean. Like you right now get hired to go work with a group, and I'll just call you the facilitator and the group is the group. And so oftentimes there's facilitator group ratios and it maxes out, right? You can only handle, I don't know, max like 3 or 4 groups at a time.
Sure.
And I'm curious to know, Core Clarity is a digital asset you guys use. Are there other assets that you use or other assets that exist that help you to change the facilitator group ratio at scale?
Yeah. So I am working on a digital program for athletes. So I do a small group training for athletes, and it's over Zoom. It's not in person. But there is a digital, so I'm building a digital side to that. So I almost consider it like a down sale, right? Hey, you can't be in person, but you still really want access to this information. Here's a module that you can purchase. Is that what you're saying? Like,
yeah, so so they would purchase it as a recording of you, or would you
yes.
still show up in
It
person?
would be a recording. So the small group coaching I do is me showing up in person over Zoom, but then I'm building a digital version of that where I'm not showing up. Like it's a recording of me.
So more of a product that
Yes.
you can then sell
Yes.
at scale.
Yes.
without
I
you
don't do that with teams. I think my vision for the business is to build a platform for some of that. But at this point, I like working closely with coaches and teams because I want to make sure that there is a result, like that our expectations like are the same and we're meeting their expectations too. So I just find I haven't done any of that yet because I don't think we're ready for that yet, like in terms of continuity and making sure like we know what we're offering and we can back that promise at the end of the day.
Based off of that answer, I'm really curious because you've spoken now a little bit about working so much with the coaches or the teams and not doing a one-off session, but really being with them for a while. You've also told us a little bit about what you missed about coaching was that development aspect. Like you can watch and see how the people that you're mentoring and coaching grow over time. And so specifically, I'm curious, how do you measure the growth over time with your clients?
So I think I try to get really clear on before I am working with somebody on what are we actually doing here? Like, what are we trying to solve? What is the actual problem? That can become really challenging, I think, sometimes. And I think when I first started, my mistakes were that I would just talk to the coach. And sometimes a coach's take on what the problem isn't actually the problem. So I really try to get as full of a picture as I can of what is actually happening in order to make sure we are able to find the correct solution and go the correct route. In terms of measuring results, so I think it depends. So I worked with a coach recently, and her some of the issues that she was facing was, okay, she was, she got her review back, her end of the season review, and her athletic director was like, listen, you got to work on these things. Your team is saying this. And so there was a pain point there. So she was motivated to find a solution to the pain of, hey, not, feeling like her athletes don't trust her. She doesn't have good connection or relationship with them. And so I sat down with her at least on two different occasions to just talk through like, hey, let's just get honest. What are the issues that you're facing? So we kind of targeted 3 things for her. It was increasing her confidence, increasing her ability to find ways to connect with her team through her own unique personality. So things that were going to be congruent and aligned with who she is, not someone she's not. And then helping so one of the things she needed to do was help have a vision and a mission for her team because she didn't have that. So in measuring her confidence, it really was just her perception. They had a lights out season, which I think is always helpful. I can't attribute that to just the work that I did because, hey, they had a new freshman class and, maybe they just had better communication this year, but those were some of the things we were working on. So I think her seeing the change in her team, people being more bought in, there being a difference in their results because they never made the playoffs before. And this was the first season they did that. I think she could see like, hey, there's some tangible wins here that are happening that maybe wouldn't have happened if I didn't do this type of work. But I think at the end of the day, when I did my evaluation, that's what she said. Like, I just felt more confident in who I am as a person and how I'm deciding to coach when I'm out there. So it's really, it's really perception based, but trying to get a number on that, I think is challenging. But as long as there's some results and they're perceiving that, to me, that's, and I'm like, hey, 8 out of 10, 1 out of 10. What would you do this again? Was this impactful? If 10 is the most impact it could ever have in your life ever, like, where are we on that scale? So for me, it's, I think that's how I end up measuring it, is just really keeping close communication of what's going on. How are you feeling? What's happening? And then how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really long-winded answer.
Okay, I took notes, so I was following the whole time.
Yeah, I think in sport, it's just interesting because it can't just be the, whether there's a W, you got a chalk mark in the W column. And again, like I know I do know that that's what happens. Like, there is a actual result that does happen on the field when you start working on communication and trust and engagement and all these things. But, that's like, I'm not going in for that. Like, and if that's what somebody wants, I'm like, you're not the person, because you want me to do that, but it's really you that has to do that. I'm just the facilitator of that. But they are the ones that have to do the work. So. Great questions.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this the right way, so please bear with me.
Just let it rip.
Okay. So, well, whenever this was like a couple questions ago, but you mentioned like how, like, because I'm a coach too, and it's like, as coaches, like, I'm not equipped to be a sports psychologist and like all of these things that, like, kind of now post COVID, a lot of the kids kind of expect us to be like almost their therapist, or even like their athletic trainer, or like all these like things that I am not equipped to do. And I think the problem that like I know that I'm facing here at like my current like school is that like we don't necessarily have like administrative support, and if we do, it is like very much like a one-off thing. Like, we had like mental health first aid training at the beginning of the year, and it's supposed to help me figure out if somebody has like like suicidal thoughts, or if they're anxious or depressed. And it's like, yeah, I can recognize those signs, but like I had one 8-hour session that like was soul sucking that whole day. And like, moving forward, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to like be effective with that kind of training. And I feel like it's like similar with this kind of stuff. It's like, we don't necessarily, like, as coaches, like, yeah, I want to be there for them and I want to like be able to like do this stuff, but like I don't necessarily have the support from like the higher up to help me do that. I guess you could, that's kind of like, so how would you like kind of like target this towards like administration, like athletic directors or somebody, to like say like, this is actually important to like help your coaches be more successful, because like they don't have the resources to like actually do this themselves?
One of the things I do, I'll give away a little secret, is I look on athletic department websites, and I'll find their vision and their mission. And I'll say, oh, how's that going? how are you doing with that? Like, and then I'll try to just connect what we do to some of those, like, hey, if you need help, we focus on, blah, 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 blah. Because I know that many times those are window dressing and they're actually not really happening consistently. And it's kind of bold, but I'm like, you know what? Like I've been inside of 8 different athletic departments. I know you're not doing this unless you are really on the right track. But it's hard because, for senior staff, it's the same battle. Like I'm stretched. I'm trying to do the best I can. So here's this 8-hour session so we can tick this box to say that we gave you some equipping. I think people just don't know how to do it differently and look at it differently. It's like you have to shift the paradigm and see it from a different angle. And I think people think it's going to be like this insane amount of work or it's going to cost $1 bazillion. And the reality is both of those are not true, but we've kind of built, and unfortunately that's been the industry. We've built up, like when somebody comes and sends you an email and says, we'd love to do this. You're like, yeah, okay, whatever, delete. Because that's what it has become. It has become one-off. It has become, and I think really our goal is to give a coach some professionalism back. Like my goal is not, even though this work is sustainable and I want to work with someone over time, my goal is not that you're not equipped at the end of this and then you have to call me again next year. Like I would like to work myself out of a job that you have what you need to be able to, and you're not going to be able to be all things to your team, but that you've got more equipping and more confidence in how to navigate the nooks and crannies of people's personalities a little bit better because you know a little bit more about them now and you know how to initiate some of those conversations. And you know some of the pitfalls of what might happen with certain talents. Hey, these talents get really explosive when certain things are happening. So I think I think that is trying to get that out there and help administrators see that. But that's usually where I start. I'm like, hey, how's your mission and vision going? Are you guys implementing that? And I don't say it as matter of fact like that, but I'll point to that and hey, these are great values. What does that look like inside of your athletic department? And usually that gets a little bit of attention. And my subject line is like, I can help you with these or something. It points to that, your student athlete success program. Because a lot of those are just, I will never poo-poo the work because I always think it's great anytime anybody's doing anything, but usually they're just surfacey. And I think again, COVID has given us an opportunity to like, yes, is it about student athlete mental health, but it's also about coach mental health. It's also about what's the environment that's being created within this athletic department or within a team that could be causing more duress than is already happening as a student athlete and as a coach.
Yeah. And I think that was like something like my head coach, she was like, mental health is very important and like will always point you in the right direction. And she like last year she was very open and she was like, come to us. But like, and then the athletic department was also like, you need to be there to support your student athletes like with their mental health and stuff. And like they started like unloading a lot of stuff that like a therapist should be unloading with them. And then like me and my other coach, like we were stuck there with like all of this stuff. And it's like, how do we deal with this? Like, how am I supposed to deal with this on top of my own crap? Like, how am I supposed to like process like your trauma basically? And
right.
like, what am I supposed to do with it?
That's not your job. Like they should have and they should have some type of resource, like person that you can point kids to school therapist, school counselor. If you guys don't have one on staff.
Yeah, it was a lot. This year's gone much better, but like, it was just like post-COVID. It was like,
everybody was just really reacting and trying to get their bearings.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for my.
It's good to be an ear and to be a listener
and
help them find a trained certified processor. So, Abby, you have said poo-poo twice in this. And as someone with
It's always referring to, you know, the assessments. I will never poo-poo
as
those.
someone who has a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old who currently thinks poopy head is the funniest thing to ever say ever, I have appreciated that. So
Oh, that's funny. I'm glad.
yeah, so guys, I think this has been really good. Abby, I think it's awesome. I've really enjoyed learning just more about what you do. Is Core Clarity what connected you with Brenda? 'Cause I know
Yes.
she was really that
Yeah.
like she was at Asheville, that was like her thing.
Yeah, she used that one of the facilitators that she had used was actually the gal who I sat in with with the workshop.
Okay.
And so that's how we kind of got connected.
Gotcha. I figured that was
Yeah.
the dots. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Obviously, guys, Abby is not in the program, but in the program. And you know, y'all are all out there doing your own things. Y'all can connect and chat and continue the conversation. But I think this is really good for class purposes. So thank you so much, Abby.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Anytime. If you guys have questions or anything you want to know more, I always want to help people. So if you need resources or just want to kind of be more curious, please ask.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your time, guys. Thank you for the questions. Great questions.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you. Talk soon.